Thank you so much, Mindy. And thank you, people who turned your camera on. I really, really appreciate that. As a person who gives presentations, it's really good to see your face because 68% of what we communicate is through our body language, not through the words that are coming out of our mouth. So I want to say hello to Craig. James, thank you for turning on your camera. Leslie, how you doing, Leslie? You there? She's probably cooking in the background. Brittany, good to see you there. I got Kimi. We've got Tolupe. I want to just tell me how to say your name properly. Thank you for turning on your cameras, folks. Good to see everyone. So today we're talking about why the why is important. A little bit, I'm going to expand a little bit on what Mindy said there. Can you see this bio page of mine right now?
Yes.
Great. All right. So a little bit about me, then we're going to jump into the content. So I have a company, Thinking Visibly Consulting. I like to make our thinking visible. It's based on the book about brain works from when I was working at Harvard University. And you can see that logo there. I spent 15 years at Harvard working in IT department as an analyst. I taught at the Harvard IT Academy, worked at the Harvard Business School, teaching Harvard MBA's public speaking skills, showing them how to do VC pitches and helping them gain confidence before they go out into the workforce. And after working at Harvard, I went over to Scrum Inc. I was invited to work at Scrum Inc. Anybody heard of Dr. Jeff Sutherland? Raise your hand or open your mic. Brian has, and so has James. He invented Scrum. He is my mentor. I worked with him for 3 years when I was at Scrum Inc. And while there, working with Dr. Jeff Sutherland, I worked in the biotech industry and healthcare, where I currently hold a position at Mass General Brigham in Boston. They were my client, and then they pulled me back in to help them with their agile transformation. So I'm doing that as well. Worked with AB InBev, the biggest food and beverage manufacturer on the planet, Budweiser. We helped them with their transformation. You know, when you do consulting work, you have to sign, the NDA, right? The non-disclosure agreement. So that's why you see some icons there without the business names. So you see that fighter jet there, so you can get an idea of like which one of those companies that I worked with them. While working at Harvard University, I worked at WGBH. I had my own radio program there. I was a director. I did voiceover work for PBS, cut my teeth at Clear Channel in Texas. And what I'm probably most proud of is being a former United States Marine. And being a Marine actually prepped me for doing this type of work, even before Scrum was invented, because I was in the Marines way back in 1979 when I was a kid. So you see my registered credentials there on the right. That's a little bit about me, Kevin Ball. So why is the why important? Now we have a poll there. How many people took the poll? Did you see the questions that we posted on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Great. Somebody took the poll. Okay, great. So who said yes?
Me, Brian.
Hey, Brian. Brian, what did you answer with the poll?
I answered it more from the backlog aspect. It was the third option, but I don't necessarily in day-to-day life always apply it as a backlog, but it's understanding a little bit more about what's driving that person and then how to help how to help, how to understand, where to go with the discussion of whatever is being discussed by understanding a little bit more.
Absolutely. So the question reads like this, everyone. Why do you ask people why they want what they want? This is like in life, in business, no matter where we are. And the 3 responses are because you're curious. And so far, 20% of the people who took the poll said curious. The next response is I want more insight to how they think, right? Sort of what Brian was talking about. 60% of the people selected that response. And then the third response is to build your backlog. For folks on the call, if you don't know what a backlog is, it's just a wish list of items to do in your workplace. So we got 20, 60, and 20. So for me, knowing why the why is important, I just want to keep pulling that thread that you said, Brian. If you can understand how people are thinking about what they want and get some more background of where this is coming from, you're really able to deliver whatever product, service, or system that you need for whomever you're working with, whatever stakeholder you're with, whatever customer that you're working with in your private life, in your business life, it really doesn't matter. Simon Sinek is really into like why. We want to start with the why. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm using a Miro board. I have a little cool graph here that we can look at as we have this talk. Can you see the Miro board there with knowing why the why is important?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Brian. So I've got why here in the middle. So this is how I walk folks through it when I'm asking questions before I build the backlog or start to commence work, doing some work with the company and some of those icons you saw in my bio page there. So first of all, I'm saying like, Brian, what's the big idea? What are you trying to accomplish? Then Brian and I have a conversation. Okay, he'll tell me some more information. I'm like, okay, so when that thing is done, what's your definition of done? Right? Anybody familiar with that term, definition of done?
Yes.
Yeah, so definition of done, if folks who don't know, is when that piece of work, before it goes out into the hands of the people who are going to be using it, you look at that definition of done to make sure that you meet it. So for me, the definition of done is sort of like the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. Think about when you go to the grocery store and you're going down the soup aisle and you pick that can of soup up. For every can of soup, there's the same information on it, right? When it was packed, how many calories, how many ounces, so on and so forth. That's what definition of done is for a body of work. And you always want to make sure that you include that in your backlog and have it right in front of you before you ship things out. Now, acceptance criteria is a little bit different, right? I would say acceptance criteria is more for exactly what the customer needs or that person is going to be using it immediately. And definition of done is more what the business needs before they deliver it out. And now you can see how I'm flowing down to the delivery component here. Any questions on what I'm saying so far? Any thoughts so far?
I guess a question that I would have just to kind of from the flow of it is, so you've got your big idea, you start to get some of that understanding. Before you can jump into the work, do you factor into your conversations definition of ready?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's really more for the team, right?
Yes.
Like what's their definition of ready? And what Brian is talking about, folks, is when you build your backlog, for me, here's my definition of ready. You have a clear description. You have the so that. It could be a system story, a job story, or a persona story. As the Agile coach for this seminar, I want to use Zoom so that I can do breakout rooms and share my Miro board. Right, that's a clear description of the so that, right? And then you have to have really good acceptance criteria. When that piece of work is done, what's going to have to happen? Mindy has to send me the link. We have to do the poll. We got to do some testing before the webinar comes. I have to tell everybody in the webinar that this is going to be a highly interactive, not a talking head kind of session. That's acceptance criteria for what we're doing right now. Now, some teams' definition of ready is another team's definition of done. This is when organizations have handoffs, right? If one team is building something and another team is supporting it, their definition of done equals their definition of ready. So they should be really identical. In fact, so much that other team that's going to be supporting it, we want to pull them in early as possible. Not too early, but the right reason, the right way, and the right time so that they can really start to help pull that piece in according to their definition of ready. Good afternoon, Unbound Solutions. Welcome to the program. How are you?
Doing great, thank you.
Great. What's your first name? Do you want to share your first name?
Oh yeah, sure. My name is Vidya.
Vidya? Nice.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, Vidya. Right. So yeah, so as we look at this diagram, this is how I think, and this is what I walk organizations through and walk teams through. And then you have the little persona thing that pops up, right? So why do we have a persona there? We want to make sure that we understand who that stakeholder or customer, who they are and what kind of makes them tick, right? So within the definition of done and the big idea, now we want to really start to drill down on what are their pain points? What are they trying to accomplish? What's going to trigger them to pick up or use what you're developing for them? Once you have a clear understanding of what that persona is, I'm going to show a template of what personas look like. Once we have that understanding, we always keep that persona in front of us when we're building that work. Because a lot of times we get so focused and just so myopic on what we're doing, we kind of forget, like, oh, wait a minute, we're doing this for someone. Let's really stay connected to what they need and how they think, so that we can build it really the right way, build it fast with really high quality as we go through. Now, the persona, hopefully you're in touch with this stakeholder or this customer, and you're going to bring them into your cycles of work. And when I mean cycles of work, I do Scrum. So that being the sprint review, we want to make sure that that customer stakeholder and that person with that persona is actually hanging out with you at least once a week or every 2 weeks. I like 1 week sprints because you got 52 times a year to get it right. But some people do 2 week sprints, and I would advise no more than that, to have that feedback back from the customer. So I'm going to share my screen differently this time. I'm going to show you a little funny template that we have for personas. Can you guys see the Hoff? Can you see the Hasselhoff there?
Yes.
Right. So a persona is a fictional person, right? We don't want to use the real names, right? We want to come up with a fake name, right? But you want to apply this thinking all the way through your stage development when you're building or creating, or whatever whatever you're charged with doing in your world. And it becomes the face of the backlog item, right? It's like, yep, we're doing this for this person. It helps us with context. So if we start, a lot of times we start to veer off and really move away from the why we're doing the work for someone, but having this persona right in front of them helps us to have that shared understanding. But here's another way to look at it, right? So here's an example. So this is Carl, the cost-conscious consumer. We got his age, fake name, right? Age, occupation. You don't really have to get that deep on the Myers-Briggs thing, but I just thought that was kind of fun to throw that in there so we can understand what their personality type is. But look at what he's frustrated about. Understand what your stakeholders and customers are frustrated about, because we want to know why we're building that thing for them. What's their personal goals, right? Ask them those questions. But what's more important is the purchase triggers, not just buying something, but what's going to trigger them to use that thing that you're building for them, that product, process, or system, right? So here's a template that you can use when you're building personas. Here's a different one. Sarah, the sophisticated swiller. She's 28, right? She's single. She lives in Houston, right? She's frustrated because you have to consider all these options that lack a clear way of, kind of identifying what the quality of her beer, what she likes to drink. What's her goal? Outgoing, wants to enjoy as many different beers as possible, so on and so forth. Her triggers are a cool, interesting backstory. So when she goes to a brewery, she wants a backstory, like, why is this IP the way it is? Why is this ale the way it is? It's just to get a deeper understanding and dive deeper into the psyche of the person you're dealing with. Oh boy, we've seen these people before, right? Ivan, the irate internal customer, right? We got his demographics over here. You can see what he's frustrated about, right? Waiting on other people. His goal is like, he wants exactly what he wants and promised right on time. Like, I want my stuff. He wants on-time delivery. So that's just a couple of different ways to build your persona templates. Who on the call here has ever used personas in their work or just in their lives at all?
I did. I'm also a bartender, where I was.
Really? Oh, that's awesome. So you can identify with Sarah, the sophisticated swiller, James.
Yes,
Tell us,
absolutely.
tell us a story about when you used persona in your life.
Well, essentially, one of the things I do is I do that during story building workshops. One of the things that I have promoted, along with the especially in the product owner class, is basically creating a story map. What do you want to build? And then go ahead and fill out. Go ahead and do details for each one of the major pieces in the story block. And for that particular case, you definitely need to go ahead and use personas, very simply because as far as personas go, there's not just one. There's usually multiple ones. And those will basically focus on different or emphasize different areas of what you're building. And in doing so, one of the things that you can do is build that story map that covers all the things, and then identify Okay, what's your first release going to look like, and what is it going to do for each one of the personas?
Absolutely, James. I like that explanation that you gave. And to kind of pull that thread some more, the story mapping piece that James talked about, you can also do a customer journey map as well, right? Like, what's the first thing this customer is going to touch all the way through? Like, my cousin has a restaurant in Texas, and I walked her through the customer journey. Like, when they first walk into the door, what are they going to smell? What are they going to see? And what are we going to say to them? What are they going to read on the board where they're going to order? She has a jack potato bar. And then when she comes to the counter to order, what is that journey going to be like for that person? When they get to the point of sale, how long is it going to take for the baked potato to come out? So you're right, James, we map that journey out. And when you're really clear on each of those stages, those are your bigger epics and they go right into your backlog. Right.
Yep.
So you map things out. You can do the customer journey mapping, you can do the story mapping, but you want to lean it out. You want to map it out and pull those bigger epics and those bigger components down to your backlog and then decompose them with the team. Right, James?
Yeah, just go ahead and give you that more than one persona, your suppliers, and how you're dealing with them. So the beauty of it is it gives you a bigger picture, and it allows you to go ahead and identify what's most important across the board.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you have a supply chain, you have the customer journey, you even have the journey of the owner themselves, right? We just talked about the bar and a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
So you look at all of these different personas, these different ways of slicing the experience up. And when you're building your backlog, you're considering all of those different aspects of the journey when you're building your backlog. And it keeps the backlog tighter and more meaningful. And we have a deeper understanding when we're pulling the work in.
Yeah, it keeps the junk out of the backlog, backlog rather than a dumpster.
Right. Yeah. Because what James is talking about, folks, a lot of backlogs just have a bunch of stuff in it. It's just gnarly. It's just not really clear, but we want to have really clearly defined items in that backlog when we're pulling the work through. And you can tell as well through teams' throughput and their consistent velocity. And the velocity should be climbing based on capacity, right? We get sick, we go on vacations, but teams should be accelerating as they go on when things are crisp and clear.
Well, I'll just point out one other thing is that in terms of doing something like that, it makes it easier for the product owner to go ahead and identify the sprint goal.
Absolutely.
Sprint, because if the product owner is smart, he's going to have some of the stakeholders or customers say at the sprint review.
Absolutely. Yeah, you want to get that feedback. You want to get that feedback. And when you have those customers and stakeholders in the room during sprint review, you still want to ask that question, why? Well, no, I want to change that, Craig. Quinn, I want to change it. I'm going to go, why do you want to change it? Where's the value in that? Tell me a little bit more. Because sometimes we may already have that piece done for them, or we may have it somewhere else in the back that we can pull forward for them and not just willy-nilly say yes to everything a customer stakeholder is asking for. What happens when we say yes all the time, folks? You can open up your mics, people. Open up your mics. When we say yes all the time, what is that going to do for us?
Not a whole hell of a lot.
Right?
Come overwhelmed because you're trying to do everything for everybody and there's no prioritization, and then you really end up disappointing everybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Craig put it in here, explode the backlog. Absolutely. Yeah. We just can't shove more paper in the printer to make it go faster. Right?
No, agreed. It's just getting a clear understanding. And the other thing is, one of the things I've heard so many times, especially when you're looking at cars and a salesman asks you, well, what are you looking for? And he says, well, I'm not sure, but I know when I see it, I'll know.
Absolutely.
So that is part of it.
That's right. People don't know what they want until they see it.
Yeah.
Right.
And biggest thing with Agile is a misconception here in the fact that it's not about being Agile or, looking for adopting a framework or throwing in another Scrum team. It's all about business outcomes.
Absolutely. James, you nailed it. And a lot of folks, I've worked with say, oh wow, we got to increase just our velocity, more stuff, more stuff. It's not about the output. It is about the desired outcome. And Leslie made a really good note. Thank you for your text here, Leslie, saying that, yeah, unrealistic expectations. And it's all about managing expectations within the team and external to the team as well. All right, I'm going to cold call a couple of folks. Let me see if some folks that open up their microphones. Like we said, this is a communication piece here. This is an interactive program here. Okay, Kimmy, can you hear me, Kimmy? Can you open up your mic? Okay, Kimmy's a little shy. And Leslie, can you open up your mic? Can I ask you a question?
Sure. I'm not sure
Okay.
how my audio is, but I'm here.
Your audio is fine, Leslie.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
so much. Yeah, you put in unrealistic expectations. Have you experienced that in your life in terms of people thinking like, well, I expected this, but something else came out the other way, Leslie?
Certainly. I think I mean, it happens. You're trying to please, the customers, of course, right? They have their requests, but at the same time, I think you have to sort of bridge and sort of help them understand that some things may not be necessary, or you may have other, opportunities for them. So yes, I think it goes back to you can't say yes, yes, yes constantly. It's a balancing act.
Are you really good at saying no, Leslie?
Uh, I'm working on it, and
You
it's
working
not
on
really
it?
no. It's not no. It's just coming up with an alternative, right?
Yeah, yeah. And what I coach folks on is like, you're right. Sometimes it's not no, but it could be like not now, and here's why. Right, Leslie?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's not now, and here's why. And back to that word why again, right, Leslie? So they're going to say, well, why not? Well, here are some reasons why, because remember last week, Mr. and Miss Stakeholder, you gave us these other 4 things to work on, and you said those were a higher priority. That's one reason. The second reason is now my team is, spread so thin that we can't meet that other demand. So now, Leslie, we ask them to choose, right?
Exactly.
Door number 1 or door number 2.
No,
And how does that make the stakeholder feel, Leslie, when you give them the choice to choose for us to work on?
No, I think they appreciate it. I mean, then they have more ownership of it. It's more visibility into why we are not necessarily pushing back, but it's sort of understanding both sides. And I think it's definitely helped conversations with stakeholders.
I agree
Absolutely.
with Leslie. It basically what it does, it brings a sense of reality,
Yes.
because executive level have a tendency to have unrealistic expectations in terms of getting things done in a specific time frame.
Yeah, they want more. They want more. They want more. They
Absolutely.
want more. Like, just give me more. Give me more. Like, we don't care how you get it done. I want these things done by the end of the first quarter. How many times have we heard, oh, we have so many competing priorities?
My favorite thing is, okay, absolutely. You want this? No problem. Okay. What do you want to stop working on?
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
it.
amazing.
Yeah, it's just a choice. It's like it's door A or door B, right?
Agreed. Yeah,
Right.
but actually going ahead and throwing that at them, saying, okay,
Let them
do
make
you
the
want to
choice.
stop, or do you have some additional money? And if that's the case, do we go ahead and bring in another team, or do we use this existing team and put off what we're working on until we get enough people to go ahead and do the other thing? So, it's the reality injection that you periodically need to go ahead and put in order to control the situation. You're not telling them
Absolutely.
no, you're just telling them why.
That's right. Absolutely. And, I'm going to reshare my screen. I have another slide up here too that really helps us shape the stakeholders' expectations and really boil down to what they really need. Let me see here. Can you see vision versus mission? Can you see that slide?
And something
Mhm.
else I want to just add is, and why telling them the why, I like to back it up with statistics, with evidence, not just explaining, but I bring up my maybe from the previous sprint, how they've been performing. So I am going to show them in real time that, okay, this is what is happening, not just explaining so that they'll see it. Everybody sees that, okay, can we now improve on this? So why do we need to drop something for the other? So everybody sees it that, okay, this is how we've been performing. So if you try this other approach, it could get better. So it's just giving them the black and white of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Having data and having a visual radiator, a lot of folks I work with use Jira or Azure DevOps or some other sort of visual radiator that has dashboards where they're querying different things, to your point about having that data, right? And especially business owners, they look at that data and you can translate that into like, hey, we're losing money or we're losing scope, you're expanding the scope, and it's going to really throw us off. Right. So another area I bring them to is like, okay, so what do you want to accomplish? And we'll have that conversation with them. Like, okay, now that's the vision statement for your big idea. Right now, what's your mission as a business or a company? Oh, well, this is our mission. So now this is how we're going to actually turn that into reality. Right. So we want the vision statement to be really aspirational, transcendent, and we want to be able to evolve not only with the market changes, but even internal to your business, what things are changing internally that we may have to shift if we're doing data sets or if we're building something, no matter what industry that you're in. But our goals, our sprint goals will actually be tied right to the mission statement of how we're going to do it. So much that though, when you're doing your sprint planning, you want to think about the end of the sprint and what increment you want to show and share with your stakeholders at the end of the sprint, right? So you want to think about that throughout the time box work you're doing so that that accumulative work, that increment of work can be really examined and inspected by you and the stakeholders together to get that feedback to go back into the backlog. All right, Julie, can you hear us today? Welcome, Julie. Can you hear us, Julie? Let's see how many people are connected to us here this afternoon. T, are you with us? Can you hear? Brittany, are you with us today? Can you hear us, Brittany? Open up your mics. Okay, we got some shy people. All right, we'll keep it moving. All right, so.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Oh, Brittany, yay. Hey, Brittany, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Where are you dialing from today?
I'm dialing from Warner Robins, Georgia.
From Georgia. Oh, you're a couple of states below me. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, same weather. Okay, so Brittany, we want to pull you in to the conversation as well. So now I'm going to ask you the question. Why are you attending this seminar?
I'm attending this seminar because I have been perusing some Agile applications and methodologies, and I just wanted to know more about it.
So when you say Agile, say that one more time, please, Brittany.
Agile methodologies and applications.
Okay. Well, so applications, what are you discovering in terms of Agile applications? I'm asking you these questions for a reason.
So I'm discovering that it is a branch off from project management, if I'm correct, but it's more people focused than it is business focused or process focused.
Okay, that's pretty decent. So I'm going to pull up something that's going to really help you, I think. There's probably some other folks on the call too that can really give us an explanation of it. But according to the Agile Manifesto, there are 4 values in the Agile Manifesto, right? And there's also 12 principles that we follow. But what happens over time with the open source system like we've been following, things change and people move away from its original intent and people start to put other things on top of it, which is really natural for folks to do that. But it's really just couched into a certain mindset of how we work. And what I'm going to show you is the connection, how it all came together. Let me share my screen with you right now. Okay, great. Can you see this where it says Lean, Scrum, Agile? What's the connection? Can you see that, folks?
Yes.
Okay, Brittany, I'm talking to you in particular, but everybody else as well. All right. So you've got Taiichi Ono, who is the father of the Toyota lean manufacturing system, right? So this was all about getting rid of waste, right? All about understanding that stream, that value stream analysis, and that single piece of flow. So much, in fact, I'm not quite sure if they're still doing this at Toyota, but anyone on the assembly line can push stop. Anyone. They can stop the line. Then they all come together, swarm on it together, and fix the problem. So this is the beginning of it. Later on, Agile came in to the picture, but here it's a little bit different now, right? Now we're asking the customer to come in with us. Just like in sprint planning, right? We have our stakeholders come with us to have the conversation, right? To determine what the product will be, right? But it takes a lot for companies to really change, but here's the relationship. So lean started in the 1950s, right? Inspired Scrum in the 1990s. Actually, Dr. Jeff Sutherland created in 1993 when he was at the ESA Corporation. And then the Agile Manifesto was created in 2001, right? So that's the history. But here's what Agile is. It's a mindset. And here are the 4 values: individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working product or working stuff over comprehensive documentation, Brittany, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following the plan. Now, the stuff on the right is totally important, but we just value the stuff on the left a little bit more, right? And here are all the signatures of the Agile Manifesto right down here.
Okay.
Now, let's go to the 12 principles. Here they are, 12 principles of Agile development. It's really common sense, and it's really, really simple. A lot of times I've heard people really overcomplicate it, but if you look at these bullet points, right, it's about satisfying the customer through early delivery. Who doesn't want to do that? We want to welcome changing requirements to a point where we can, deliver working software on a more consistent basis. Work together daily. This is why we have daily scrums. We have, sprint reviews with our stakeholders, and we have retrospectives with our teams, right? We want to build projects around people who are excited, right? We want to have a, effective method of making sure we have this information conveyed the right way, and face-to-face is the best. The pandemic now, being in person is really a little more cumbersome, but at least we are face-to-face right here. But working stuff is the primary measure of success. I know this is software centric right here, but it's just working stuff. I worked at a biotech company, and this particular department, the only thing they served up was documents to the FDA for medicines to get approved. It was paperwork. It was documents. So it's not always working software. It's just working stuff. But we also want to just maintain a good pace. Because like I said, we all agree, stakeholders, customers want more, but we have to be really careful and do a constant pace on a consistent basis, right? But we want to make sure we got really good technical excellence, right? The art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. We want to emerge from self-organizing teams. It doesn't mean they can just do what they want. They're going to do what's asked of them, but they're going to figure out how to do it. That's the point here. And then at a regular pace, at a regular cadence, you want to have retrospectives. You want to really examine what the team is doing, the organization is doing on a cadence to make their processes better. I always make sure organizations every quarter examine all their stuff.
Well,
what's going well? What can we improve on a quarterly basis? Yes, James.
Yeah, one of the things that I've run into, and I've kind of come up with a solution, or I actually found the answers in a book called Doing Agile Right. But one of the things that I've gotten hit with from the executive level, upper management, is you go ahead and show them the four values of the Agile Manifesto, and they say, what did they say? Well, that's for the software team, or that's for the team. And one of the things that I did do was I found information enough to go ahead and say, well, in an agile environment or lean agile environment, okay, you need to understand that there's an agile leadership team level. There's not just an agile team level, there's an agile leadership team level. And just as an example, individual interactions and processes. Okay, yes, that's for the software, that's for the boots on the ground. But for the executive level, what does it mean? It means we set a clear ambition, what and the why, and the metrics for success, but delegate the how to the team.
Absolutely.
And we empower teams and believe that the right answer lies not with us, but within the team.
That's why we hired them, for their expertise. And James is absolutely right, because when I go into organizations, I start with the executives, the CEO, the CFO, and the CIOs of organizations. That's where I start, because I get them Scrum and I get them to understand. Then it just kind of comes down to the rest of the teams. Brittany, open your mic back up. After walking through these 4 values and 12 principles and hearing the conversation, does this help you a little bit more, Brittany, to understand what Agile is all about?
It absolutely helps me. It breaks down just the principalities of everything.
Right. So it's a, I say it's a mindset, right? It's not really a methodology per se, but it is a method. It is a way of working. And Scrum is a way to implement this into our business. There's different ways. There's different frameworks out there. I do Scrum, right? Because of who trained me.
Right. How does this relate to Six Sigma? Is this different?
This is Lean Six Sigma.
Gotcha.
So it's Lean Six Sigma. So it comes out of Lean, and Lean is baked into the Scrum framework as well. We want to lean everything out. So let me paint a different picture for you to help you get inside Dr. Sutherland's mind. He is like the Bruce Lee of project management to me, pulling on these different systems that have existed, but putting his own twist on it, right? And one thing I think was really unique was the burn down chart. So he was a pilot in Vietnam. He was a fighter pilot. Then he became a trainer of people, teaching people how to fly jets. And if we've all flown airplanes before, when we're landing, can't you feel the pilot adjusting and making different moves and maneuvers so that he can land the plane smoothly? Will we agree? Same thing with projects. This is why in 1993, he and Ken Schwaber said, let's codify this Scrum thing, because projects aren't landing on time. How are we going to track these projects? Oh, Gantt charts don't work. Gantt charts imply that we're going to know everything every day. It's going to happen exactly this way for a year. BS. Doesn't work like that. My question to you, Brittany, do things change?
Absolutely.
All the doggone time. It's inevitable, right? Things do change. So the burn down chart helps us. It's a planning metric, not a performance metric. It helps us measure where we're going when we put story point to our different bodies of work, so we can see where we are. But what I do for executives, to James's point, who think, oh, that's not for us, that's for the teams, I translate that burn down chart into more of a project management chart that has red, green, yellow, and blue on it. So they go, oh, I can see the diamonds. Oh, the projects are going well. So there's creative ways to flip things and interpret things so it's palatable for people. In fact, so much when I go into organizations, I don't really say Agile and Scrum a lot. I really minimize those words, but I increase the meaning that's underneath them that makes sense so they can take it in. That makes sense, Brittany?
It does, absolutely.
Great. Yep, so those are the 4 values and the 12 principles of Agile. We're talking about why the why is important. I think we're really starting to boil down to the reason why we ask these questions, right? I was looking at the poll. Mindy, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Great. Mindy, do we have any other stats on the poll that we took on LinkedIn? I'm curious to see what people are responding to, if there's a change.
Let me refresh really quick.
Okay.
We had 17% for because you were curious.
Okay.
75% for want insight to how they think, and 8% to properly build your backlog.
Wow, so that's changed over time, Mindy. At the beginning of the program, we had, I'm just looking at my other computer here, folks. I'm not ignoring you, so I can look at these questions. So earlier, so the question is, why do you ask people why they want what they want? At the beginning of the program, it was 20% people because they were curious, 60% because they want insight to how they think, and 20% to help properly build their backlog. Now, the data has changed. We got a little different metrics here. It's 17% curious. Now it's 75% people want insight to how they think. And now we have 8% to build a proper backlog. Let's hear from some other people on the call. Frank, you've been a little bit quiet. What do you think, Frank, about this 75%? It's gone up 15% over time that people want more insight to how people think. What do you think about that, Frank?
I think people selected that because most others selected it.
I don't think they can see the results, Frank. The results are hidden.
They
Only
clicked
Mindy
on the
can see
link
them.
and went to the website. The newer members that joined later could see the results.
Any other thoughts on why most people are saying they want more insight the way people think or how they think, how the customers think?
It's when you're asking why, it's asking questions. You want more information.
Yeah,
You want the real information there.
right. You want the real information, but it takes time, right?
Yes, it does.
Anybody ever heard of the 5 why
Five whys.
routine?
Yep. Five
Yeah, the
whys.
five-
I was about to say that.
Yeah, it's been around for a long time, right? But there is a point where you have to stop. Sometimes you can stop after the second or third why. It just really, really depends. So being able to ask those questions in the right way, you can get down to the bottom of it.
And that's what the sprint reviews are about.
Yeah, absolutely. Even before we even
Getting
start
to
building the
real
backlog.
why.
Yeah, even before we start building the backlog, I want to know why you want this thing. Help me get inside the laboratory of your mind so that we can extrapolate that out and really build a healthy backlog.
And then
for
adjust it
customers.
during each sprint review. Based on what
Absolutely.
I see. Yeah, I can appreciate what Jeff Sutherland was saying. I was also a naval aviator.
Oh, you're a
And,
naval aviator. Okay, all right. Hoorah.
so it's one of those things where, when you're landing, okay, there's a constant change. And you
Absolutely.
adjust.
Absolutely. And that constant change and adjustment, we have to really get comfortable with that as we're delivering our work within the sprint. That's all it is. That's why we have the daily scrum. And the questions I train people on is like, is there anything blocking you from reaching the goal? Is there anything you need help with to achieving the goal? For me, it's a team sport. It's about the goal, just not haphazardly just working on pulling in stuff from the backlog because it's something easy to do. We want to be goal oriented all the time. And me being a former Marine, that really resonates with me. Being a football player, that resonates with me. Being a father of twins, that resonates with me. Being on this call with you, that resonates with me. We want to have a goal or something that we're really making sure that we're trying to achieve as we're going through our day-to-day work. Okay, so not Linda, but Julie, you still quiet? You want to stay quiet? Linda, what about T? T, are you with us? TE, can you hear us? You want to open up your mic?
T had commented in the chat earlier that it's really loud where they are at.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
noisy
T.
here, so I think that's why T is staying quiet because we would not be able to hear
Thank
them.
you so much. I appreciate
Uh-huh.
that. Thank you so much. All right. So let's keep it moving. So we've talked about the why, we talked about acceptance criteria, and we talked about delivery a little bit, but let's dive a little bit deeper down on how we deliver these outcomes to our customers. So there's a variety of paths to do that, right? Depending on what we're creating. When you talk about the delivery system of what you're making, what are some of those questions that we want to ask in terms of how do we want it delivered? Is it going to be through a communication plan? Is it actually going to get on a truck and be shipped out? Right, Brian? I see you thinking over there, Brian. Like, what's the best method of delivery? What do you think about that, Brian? Do you ask those delivery questions? What's the best way to get it out to the people that need it?
That's always a factor, yes, of how you're going to be able and how the team's going to be able to fulfill it. Because once you got what the need is, then the solution is, based on that why is, okay, well, then how are we going to get it to them to appease the customers?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that delivery mechanism is really important, but there's something that even comes before the delivery, and that's the release plan, right? So what is the plan to release these accumulative increments to the customer? What's the release plan to get that thing out of the door into the hands of the people that it needs? We talked about mapping. We talked about story mapping. We talked about customer journey mapping. And when you map out what you're going to do, that delivery piece, that release piece is in there, right? And as we look at that delivery piece, if we look at the mapping, we want to pull that down into our sprints. And sometimes the sprint goal is to actually, okay, we have to release this thing, but it really has to go through our definition of done first, right? Through our quality check. But here's the thing, we're not saving the testing to the end, are we? No, we're doing test-driven development. We want to test inside of the time box. Why do we test inside the time box? Why do we test inside the time box? Why is important? You're on mute, James. Go ahead and open up. Brian, but you're unmuted. Let me hear from Brian real quick. Brian, why do we test within the sprint?
So that as the developer is developing, again, especially if it's a Scrum team with those small iterations, you need to know that it's working right. And so you want to make sure that it is going to meet the criteria that was set up in order to pass. And you don't want to find that out at the very end that it didn't. And now you got to go back to the beginning. And now you got to go back to the customer and say, well, we didn't get it that sprint. We'll try to do it this sprint. So you have to bake that into the same time frame.
Absolutely. And it's just not developers, right? What if, so like I said, what about that FDA team that I work with that's creating documents? That still needs a quality check, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah.
So I actually had them do the proofing and the testing before they sent it out. Because before they would just compile, do the interviews, compile, and we got to ship that thing off. I'm like, wait a minute, what about the first 2 chapters? Let's put that through the quality check. Let's cross the T's and dot the I's on that. What about the second chapter? Let's bring in the clinical team so they can put their eyes on it one more time. And they might say, you know what? After reading this one, I think we need to change this. Oh my God, thank you so much. We're going to put that information into the backlog, reiterate on that next piece of document before they ship it off to Washington, DC. Because once you ship things off to the FDA, there's no going back and forth. It's done. You give it to them and you are done. They're going to either accept it or deny it. You got to start all over again. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And it also costs money to fix bugs at tail end. If you detect them early and you fix them, it costs cheaper than to leave them to when they've gone into production. Way too expensive. So, and it's also helped the Scrum team to get focused, to get because if you start to pile up your bugs, you now need another separate meeting triad to make. No, it's not. And then you need different story points and then money again, because that means extra money will be spent for the extra time that will be used on the bed. If they are done within the sprint, it's just within that sprint that the playing for, and then everything is kept within the sprint. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because there's a way that you can monetize this stuff. And I'll tell you what, business leaders, they understand when you're wasting money. Really good point, Mr. Dada. And we don't want to build up unnecessary tech debt. Right? Now, if it's something really gnarly, unexpected, I can understand that piece. But if it's a bug that comes in, don't even estimate it. Your definition of done for that is like to get it fixed as soon as possible. That's with anything in life, right? If you let it go on, what's going to happen, right? It's going to get harder. It's going to get more difficult to kind of unwind that as we go all the way through. Hey, Brian, thank you so much for putting the little explanation for Brittany about Six Sigma is different than Agile, right? It's a process improvement approach that uses stats, drive change decision, adding lean focuses on waste. And that's the component in Scrum where we want to move away from waste to be more efficient, right? So it's about define, measure, analyze, improve, control. So yeah, so this is definitely baked into the Scrum framework. This is what I like about Scrum. It pulls, and it has ideation in it. It has design thinking in it. It has Six Sigma all baked into it together. This is why it's really hard to do Scrum. It's not easy. It's really, really tough to do it. But once organizations really get it down, and again, I start with the executives, and they go, God, Kevin, this is really hard, and they struggle. But once they get through it, they go, oh wow, now I'm really we're saving time. I see the benefit from doing these really good patterns and these really good habits. So when I start to train the teams, they're watching leadership like, yep, they're doing their daily scrum. Yep, the executive action team are meeting. Yep, the executive meta scrum is meeting 15 minutes after that every day. The teams now say, wow, we have this body that we can pull our impediments up and get them squared away in 1 or 2 days, versus, like Mr. Dada said, like ignoring the bugs and sweeping things under the rug. We want to make sure that we can square those things away immediately.
Technical debt is usually a percentage of the sprint.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean by that? Unpack that a little bit more so people can understand what you're saying, James.
Essentially, what you want to do is, if you discover there are certain bugs that are in there, okay, you allot a certain amount of time talking to the product owner to go ahead and resolve these bugs.
Right.
Go ahead and bring the quality up. Given the fact that, okay, you want to go ahead and minimize technical debt, because the other thing that we also deal with is we also deal with the DevOps side of this, Agile DevOps.
That's right.
The technology that we have there allows us to go ahead and do continuous delivery, but still have control over the release.
Right.
And those are done through toggle switches, where you can go ahead and release to a subset of your customer base, having them test it out before you go ahead and do a full commercial release.
That's right. Test-driven development is the best. I'm pulling up this slide here that I'm glad we're talking about bugs and how things come in. I'm going to demonstrate how a company can actually fix bugs if they're set up the right way. I'm going to share my slide deck with you. Can you see this case study of Rosetta Stone?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so Rosetta Stone, if we don't remember, was a language company, and they produce software to teach you how to, learn different languages. So we're going to say these are different languages. I'm going to pick this. I'm colorblind. Don't laugh at me. Is this pink?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. I got that one right. Okay. So, so you have your chief product owner, right? This is the person that owns the value stream. And there's a chief product owner for each set of these teams here. So this color over here, we've got 3 teams down here with 3 product owners, 3 here. This one has 5 teams. This one has 3 teams. So what can typically happen in a day, these teams all meet for 15 minutes. Then the next set of teams, the product owners, they'll meet for 15 minutes, so on and so forth, up the ladder. In about an hour, you can represent 300 or 400 or 500 people. So here we go. So a bug comes in, right? The chief product owners get together and go, wait a minute, whose is that? They goes, that's me, Spanish language. I actually speak Spanish a little bit too. Yep, that's our bug. So I'm going to talk to my product owners now, right? Like, hey guys, there's a bug that come in. Whose is it? This product owner is going to go, hey, that's mine, but my buffer is really full. I just don't have the capacity to do it. The other product owner, because we're a team sport and we're team players, they'll say, you know what? I can take it in. My buffer is not full. We're not as good as the other team, but we can still drive it to done. This is a really fast way to set up your organizations when things come in, quick identifying it within an hour or so, identifying who can do it. They pull it into their backlog and they drive it to done. So a really quick visualization on how to scale your organization and get bugs wiped out really quickly. All right, going to go back to the Miro board here. We're going to actually do an exercise together. All right, I left some of these items blank here. Can you see knowing why the why is important?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So we talked about the why, right? We have a poll going on out there. Mindy, thank you very much for that. Those updated data sets. We have our big idea.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. We have our definition of done, our acceptance criteria. We've talked about delivery, and we talked about personas. What else do we need to think about? What else should I type in here, folks? What else can go in here when we're doing our mind mapping?
What about the team itself? The team
Yeah, the team itself, right? The team, slash what skills do we have to be able to actually attack that problem, right? So this is even before we get to like developing backlog. This is the conversation that we want to have with the stakeholder and the customer, but we also want to examine ourselves too, like, okay, are we lining up? Can we even handle that? How else do we need to resource ourselves? What else? What else can we put in here?
Architecture.
Architecture. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that could
Architectural runway.
architectural runway. Would that be attached to the definition done in acceptance criteria as well?
Essentially, what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and speak to what the teams need in terms of getting it out there.
Okay. So we got architecture, we've got the teams and skills, we've got personas. Anything else?
It would have to also include the what are the other things that are on the team's plate to try to figure out how to prioritize what this new Y item
Yeah.
is going to be.
Yeah, prioritization. Like, how are we going to prioritize this doggone big thing these people are asking us to do? Yeah, so we got the big idea, we got our definitions, we got acceptance criteria, we understand, we're getting deeper. We talked about our delivery system, we got some architecture conversations going on, right? Okay, we got the teams and the skills, we got 2 or 3 personas built up, we got prioritization. Is there anything else that we need? What else might be helpful?
I'm thinking about the user itself of the whole setup, the big idea, the end user.
Okay, that's the persona in this case.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah, that's the person that's going to be using it.
Yeah.
But what else? What else could you?
Are there any like date drivers or deadlines that you need to
yeah,
for?
yeah, time frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we want to think about time frame. That's one word, right? Time frame, absolutely. Yeah, and for me, people say, well, I don't know when it's going to get done. We have to have deadlines, folks. And in fact, how I coach executives and companies is like, oh yeah, give me the time frame and we're going to beat it. Not only are we going to beat it, Leslie, we're going to beat it with really good quality. Okay, Leslie, you're on a roll here, Leslie. Time frame, what else comes with time?
What else comes? Money, cost.
Yeah. Yeah. Dollar bill, y'all. Absolutely. Money. How much is this freaking thing gonna cost? Right. And they need to know that. Right. We need to know that. And can we afford it? And are we going to keep an eye on the budget as we're doing this project? Right. We have to really make sure we do that. Yeah.
So we're looking at a roadmap as well.
Yeah.
Because that
absolutely
kind of ties into the dollars and what is the functionality we want to release and when do we release it?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull this down so we can see it a little bit better. Yeah, these are all the really important components. And just coming off of that one doggone question, why? Isn't it amazing how just one question can lead to so much other stuff? And it should lead to this other stuff, shouldn't it? Right? It really should lead to this. Anything else that we can add on here? We've got some really good mind mapping going on right now. What else? We've got money, we've got time frame, roadmap, we're going to prioritize it. Skills, we got the persona, we know who we're going to do it for. What else? I think I have one. But we build this in, I think we build it in automatically. I think we've said it a little bit today. Right? There's always some unknowns when we walk into work, isn't there? Right.
That's true. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I would look at is in terms of the roadmap, okay, where you go back to the customer and you go ahead and get the reaction from customer panels and whatever. and
So,
build that into the roadmap to go ahead and deal with the unknowns.
yeah.
Right.
So tell me,
Along.
yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. That's really interesting what you're saying, James. When you said customer panels, tell me more about that.
Well, what you're looking at is, okay, you've identified the personas and everything. What
Yep.
you need to do is go ahead and get their feelings for it. I mean, right now, what we're
Yeah.
looking at is we're looking at it from our perspective.
Right.
And
Kind of
it's
tie it in.
important. You talked about the customer journey. One of
Right.
the things that you need to do is you need to go ahead and measure the frustration or the reluctance or the, wow.
Absolutely.
factor
Yeah. Yeah.
At the customer and
good
build
point.
that into your roadmap.
Absolutely.
You may find a point where you say, you're only going to take it this far.
Right.
Now,
Absolutely.
go ahead and look at Word. The average user using Word uses 10%.
10% of the features, right, James? There's a
Yes.
few hundred things we can do in Word.
Agreed.
Really good point. So what James is talking about is pulling that persona in sooner rather than later. And we want to keep them close to us as we go all the way through. So
Yeah.
I went to the dry cleaners before I came here, right? I had a little bit of break after work. And I took a picture. It's my first time going to the dry cleaners. I used to drive by them every day and go like, I'm going to really try them out because it looked like a dry cleaners I used to use in Boston. And it was really a clean, like hyperallergenic. They don't use chemicals and things like that. And the dry cleaner I was using, which is right down the street from them, clothes were delayed. My buttons were always broken when it came back. I said, I don't like that. But let me show you. I took a picture of this thing that they had on their wall. I took this today. The 10 Whys of Organic Cleaning. I picked up my dry cleaning right before I talked to you folks. And this was what was on their wall. Let me make it bigger.
Wow.
Isn't that pretty cool, folks? Look at that. The 10 Whys of Organic Cleaning. Environmentally safe, non-toxic, antibacterial, free of fault, so on and so forth. Who's not down with that? I am, because I love taking care of my clothes. I'm a Marine. I don't know about you Navy guys, how sharp you guys were with your clothes, but us Marines, we were like, James knows what I'm talking about. I had to like him a little bit, but in all seriousness, this is exactly what we're talking about today, folks. This is a mom and pop dry cleaner, 5 minutes from my house. I looked at that, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. This is really speaking to me, getting goosebumps thinking about it right now, just how the universe lines up. Do you see this when you go into stores? I just think it's really powerful. And they don't have to say anything. It's just right there in front of you. So how do you think customers are responding to this? Right, Mindy? Right, Mindy, look at that. How would you walk into a dry cleaner, like, they're not even saying anything. They just go, hi, welcome, how can I help you? And you're like looking at this sign going like, oh crap, yeah.
Well, the other thing is, once you get the bill, you also go ahead and look at the 10 Whys to justify what you're paying.
And you know what? They were a little pricey, James.
It works.
But I'm willing to pay it because they've actually unpacked their whys, why they're in business and what they do. So I just thought that was really neat. I wanted to take a picture of that and show it to you folks today. I was like, Mindy, this is awesome. Like, really? This is like, bam, right in my face, right before I come to the conversation today. All right, we've been going for a little over an hour now. It's getting late. How's everybody feeling? Do we have any other questions or statements that we want to make before we close it down? We're scheduled to go another 20 minutes or so, but I always want to be mindful of people's time. And it is in the evening and it's tomorrow for some other folks too, but I think it's like 8 o'clock in the morning for them. Any other closing questions or comments?
Yeah, all I can say is it's been a real pleasure, Kevin, and some of my best friends are Marines.
Oh, thank you, James.
And I'm adding you to the list.
Oh, thank you so much. Absolutely.
Take care.
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do before you leave, James, hold on. I'm gonna put my contact information right here in the chat. All of you, please reach out to me if you have any other questions. If you want to be in touch, please do so. I have a long email address, thinkingvisiblyconsulting.com. It's there. And maybe I should put it in my LinkedIn page too. you. Any other comments, folks, or people on the line? Some people are really quiet tonight. That's okay. Anything you would like to say before we duck out?